Alright, James, we have waited 13 years for this sequel. Was it worth the wait? Well, let's find out. Hey movie buffs, I'm Jack Benner and welcome to my review of Avatar: The Way of Water. This is the long-awaited and anticipated sci-fi sequel to 2009's Avatar, the highest-grossing film of all time still to this day, directed by the one and only James Cameron. Set more than a decade after the first, Jake Sully, as a Na'vi, has formed a family with Neytiri on Pandora, but when a familiar threat returns, Jake and his family meet a new clan of Na'vi to protect their home. Now, before we get into my thoughts on the sequel, I would like to give my thoughts on the first Avatar film from 2009. And my honest thoughts, I'm on the side that still loves that first movie to this day. From the revolutionary visual effects that were definitely ahead of its time, as well as the introduction and world building to Pandora, all of that was absolutely incredible. Even if I can agree that the story is not exactly the most original and some of the human characters are one-dimensional, but I still think that's an exciting and amazing blockbuster to this day. Is it my favorite James Cameron film? No, that would probably be Terminator 2 Judgment Day. And with that first Avatar film, I was curious to see what they're going to do with a sequel. How would they continue the story? Where are they going to take the characters? After how long this sequel has been delayed, I believe it was originally going to come out in 2014, but it kept getting pushed back and more delays. And that worried me a little bit. Would this sequel justify its existence and be necessary? And when I first saw the teaser trailer in front of Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, I thought it looked amazing and definitely made me miss Pandora. And after the first two trailers, which were very promising, my excitement started to increase and made me eager to return to Pandora. And it's one of my most anticipated films for the rest of the year. And could James Cameron make another great sequel? And that he has made two of the greatest sequels of all time with Aliens and Terminator 2. And it's crazy to think that the first Avatar came out in 2009, and I was 11 when I saw that movie in theaters, and now I'm 24 and I have seen this sequel, and I saw Avatar: The Way of Water on Saturday, had time to process my thoughts. My review is here. What are my thoughts? I'm very happy to say I found this to be a very satisfying and worthwhile sequel. Not perfect, I do have some issues with the film which I'll get to, but I enjoyed Avatar: The Way of Water. Let's start with the pros. Obviously and undeniably, the very first thing to praise are the visual effects. From a visual and technical standpoint, Avatar: The Way of Water is absolutely tremendous and a jaw-dropping spectacle. Right from the jump, it not only feels like a welcome back to Pandora, but has also reached new heights. Given how much James Cameron is known for being a perfectionist with his craft, you could definitely tell how time-consuming it was and the immense amount of painstaking commitment it took to making this look so great and taking these gorgeous visuals to the next level. From the complete awe and amazement, terrific motion capture work, attention to details, gorgeous colors, and cinematography is absolutely staggering and a huge technical achievement. The first movie has won the Oscar for visual effects, and all I can say is, it should definitely win again. The performances from the cast are all strong here. Sam Worthington, to my surprise, gives a much stronger performance than in the first film. Jake Sully has evolved as a Na'vi, both as a protector of his family and a leader, giving a more confident and emotional performance that didn't feel one note. And Zoe Saldana as Neytiri continues to be my favorite character in both Avatar films, maintaining the strong and ferocious physicality she brought to the first, as well as bringing out to the mother role this time. And there is one particular scene in the climax from Neytiri that was amazing and powerful acting from her. And that reminds me that I feel like Zoe Saldana doesn't get enough credit as an actress. And I do love her in blockbuster movies such as Star Trek, the MCU, as well as these two Avatar films. But watching this movie really reminds me of that Zoe Saldana really brings it to the emotional scenes of this movie. Out of the new characters for Jake Sully and Neytiri's family, the one that stood out to me was Kiri, played by Sigourney Weaver. While it may be a little distracting and off-putting that that's a teenage character and Sigourney Weaver is 73 now, but looking past that, I found her story one of the most interesting and compelling aspects of the film for me. And I do see that as an interesting opportunity of where they can take this character in the future. And Stephen Lang has returned for the villain again for this movie. And watching the trailer, I was curious. I was like, how did they bring him back? Didn't he die in the first movie? And I was a little worried it was going to be Palpatine in Rise of Skywalker 2.0 again. While watching it, I was like, did this villain really need to come back? He just feels shoehorned in. But luckily, it did not go that direction. I'm glad they didn't rehash his character arc and motivations. I really liked what they did with his character differently, both giving him depth and remaining a menacing and intimidating presence. And Cliff Curtis and Kate Winslet are great new additions as the parents of this new water clan of the Na'vi. One of the biggest strengths of Avatar The Way of Water is that it was both a strong continuation of the first movie, as well as an expansion of the lore and world building. One of my issues with the first film is that I found the Na'vi stuff more interesting than the human characters whenever they cut back to them. And here in this sequel, this is a more Na'vi focused story, which I really liked. I love the introduction to this water clan, which feels very interesting, fascinating, and fleshed out. And the underwater sequences are definitely major highlights of this film and just how breathtaking visually they are. And I commend the cast and crew for not only what they did visually by making it look stunning, and also for the actors for doing a lot of underwater training. From what I read, it really paid off. This sequel has a strong emotional core between Jake and Neytiri's family. It feels well developed right from the beginning and made me feel emotionally attached to these characters. I found it to be an engaging and emotional family dynamic between those characters. And the children are all great, giving the right amount of screen time, and not one that I feel like was sidelined too much. And I also feel like the sequel had a stronger message than the first film. I actually found it more sincere and heartbreaking. And I never felt like that message was heavy-handed, nor it was just shoving it down your throat. I feel like it was handled in the right way to take it seriously. I unfortunately don't remember if the composer who did the musical score for this film, I'll put his name right here. I'm sure he had big shoes to fill after James Horner sadly passed away in 2015. And I love James Horner's score in the first film, but I think this film delivered another equally amazing score. In particular, the underwater sequences and one scene involving this whale creature, I believe it was called the Payakan from what I remember, the name right here. That scene was just absolutely amazing to watch. The entire third act of The Way of Water is absolutely incredible and worth the price of admission. It has high stakes, it's very intense, it has visceral filmmaking from James Cameron, it's engaging, emotional, and exhilarating. That entire action scene still shows James Cameron excelling at blockbuster filmmaking and delivering spectacle. And that entire thrilling climax reminded me of Top Gun Maverick's climax, and I think they're equally on par. And those two are some of the best action scenes I have seen this year. Sadly, I do have some flaws with this movie. I will get to those right now. My first issue with Avatar The Way of Water is the length. This movie is 3 hours and 12 minutes long. It's a few minutes shorter than Titanic, which is still James Cameron's longest film to date. There are moments in the runtime where you definitely feel the length, and the story at times can feel a bit meandering, kind of dragging the pacing a bit. And at times the story did get a bit repetitive between what the heroes are doing and what the villains are doing. While I did find this sequel more emotionally engaging than its predecessor, one issue I do have is that it can feel like a retread of the first movie. There's a new tribe that Jake Sully's meet, the Na'vi, and the Sky People are still at war. The Sky People are mining a new substance. There's also an important message between the second and third act, and the climax involves a fight between Jake Sully and Quaritch. With this sequel, I was hoping for a slightly different narrative rather than what we've seen before. And I'm very curious with the future of the sequels. I think we're getting 3 more Avatar movies. I'm a little worried if they're going to bring something new and different to the narrative, or it's just going to be the same old thing. And again, with the future of the sequels, I am hoping we get a slightly different narrative rather than just been there, done that. And lastly, is a new character introduced named Spider. I really like the idea for this character, a human who wants to be a part of the Na'vi, and I thought the actor playing Spider did a good job. But my issue with him is both with the writing and his motivations that I feel like weren't very apparent. As the film progresses, he kept on being on the villain side, then the hero side, then the hero side, and the villain side. And I just thought, okay, you're on the hero side, and then you're on the villain side all of a sudden. You're okay with that. Okay, now you're back to the hero side, and now you're still on the villain side. I do wish his motivations could have been a bit more clear, and his writing just felt a little inconsistent. I don't think he's pointless to the film. And without spoiling anything, I do like what they're doing with his character that I found interesting. So I'm curious to see what else they're going to do with this character in the future, how they would improve him. But for now, I do think he needs to be written better, and I just feel like there's a little bit more left to be desired. In conclusion, despite my issues with the length and familiar story beats as the first, I found Avatar The Way of Water to be a very satisfying and worthwhile sequel that remains as strong as its predecessor while making improvements on certain things such as the story, characters, and emotion. James Cameron has not lost his touch and is still showing to be a one-of-a-kind blockbuster filmmaker and still creating a technical marvel with the world of Pandora. I definitely recommend this movie to you if you love the first Avatar film and you're excited to see this sequel. I definitely think you're going to love this movie. And if you do want to see Avatar The Way of Water but you haven't seen the first film, I do recommend you watch the first film before you watch this new one. But if you're not a fan of the first Avatar film, you don't like it, I have a feeling you might feel the same way as the first. But I do recommend giving it a chance, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that. And I am looking forward to watching this movie again in theaters if I have the time. At my local AMC, I just saw it in regular 3D. I did not go to Big D 3D, which I say is the equivalent of IMAX. So I'm excited to watch this movie again, and hopefully in Big D 3D. Definitely see it on the biggest screen possible and in 3D. And now to grade it, I'm going to give Avatar: The Way of Water 4 stars out of 5, a B+. I'm satisfied that we have finally gotten this sequel over the 13-year wait, and I'm very curious to see what James Cameron has in store for the sequels, and luckily Avatar 3 is coming out in 2024, so we don't have to wait over 10 years for it. And now let's talk about Oscar predictions. Right away, it's winning visual effects. Duh. Total no-brainer. How can you watch this movie and seriously think to yourself, this isn't winning visual effects? Of course it is. And if I see this movie winning another Oscar besides visual effects, maybe cinematography, to which I think that would be a deserving win since this movie looks absolutely stunning, as what I can now see getting in. It has good chances of getting a Best Picture nomination, and it would be exciting to see 2 blockbuster sequels getting in for Best Picture, this and Top Gun Maverick. I do think James Cameron does seem like a lock he might get in for Best Director. As for other technical categories, I could see production design, sound, and original score. Maybe that could be a possibility, so we'll see how this movie does at the Oscars. So I'd like to hear from you guys. What are your thoughts on Avatar: The Way of Water? Have you seen it? Do you agree? Disagree with my review? Or if you haven't seen it, are you looking forward to watching the film or not? Let me know below. Did you enjoy hearing my thoughts on this movie? If yes, please hit that like and subscribe button if you're new here. And don't forget that notification bell for my next upload in the future. It really means a lot. And until the next video, I'm Jack Benner and look forward to another movie review. And I wish you all a happy and safe Merry Christmas.